Hey there folks, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and this, it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. There are weeks where Billboard Breakdown isn't fun, and where paradoxically I don't want to rage at anything. Especially not now, in a time period where you'd think we'd be focusing on the bigger things, where even the next bigger story is getting to those topics. That in 5 years will actually be remembered in the long term, instead of what's on top this week. And I'll give them this, if you think Billboard's not going to respond to this very bad look in the near future, so this loophole winds up getting closed. Actually, you know what? Let's not dance around this anymore. The top 10, where at our number 1, for the first time in his loathsome career, 6ix9ine went to number 1 with Trollz alongside Nicki Minaj. And there's a limit to how much I will defend Billboard's stupid systems. Cue up the last several episodes of me tearing into them. And maybe they appreciate the traffic garnered by the constant turnover, but let's not mince words. They got this number 1 by gaming the system, and they actually did it the old-fashioned way. Buying singles. Yeah, on-demand streaming is not why Trollz did so well. It's actually plummeting on Spotify. And since the radio is not touching this, it's basically on sales and YouTube, jury-rigged through alternate versions and merch bundles. In short, 6ix9ine learned the lesson of getting blocked by Stuck With You, and Nicki Minaj went along for the ride because apparently working with a one-dimensional snitching child abuser who is a dead man walking for a number 1, it's worth the cost of her dignity and her legacy. She does know that when future music historians write about her, this momentary chart success and her career at large will have an asterisk next to it in the same way that many of her peers won't. Right? Again, she's not gonna get a number 1 on her own. I'll say it again. Because if Billboard was looking for a convenient excuse to end the merch bundle gamesmanship once and for all, they've got it. And I know her fans are gonna say, a number 1's number 1, bitch, you just hating, I'm gonna buy another copy just to spite you. Which means, they can't dodge responsibility for this. They enabled it. They can't plead ignorance about the soon-to-be irrelevant shit stain that she worked with. And if they really cared beyond the cheap stat pad, they recognize just how much worse this looks for her in the bigger picture. But speaking of that, once we skip over Rockstar by DaBaby and Roddy Ricch momentarily down to number 2, it's strong and gaining in all categories. It's going to be back at number 1 likely next week, but we've got The Bigger Picture by Lil Baby at number 3. I'll talk more about this later on, but while it's not really built to last thanks to really only having streaming and YouTube, I guarantee it's going to hold its spot a bit better. And frankly, it's a much better song than our other top 10 debut here. The rest of these I'll go through pretty quick. Savage by Megan Thee Stallion and Beyonce falls number 4, as it looks like it might have hit its peak. Blinding Lights by The Weeknd even more so, especially on the radio, as it falls back to number 5, which pushes back Say So by Doja Cat and Nicki Minaj to number 6, as it's just in freefall. I can also say the same for Intentional by Justin Bieber and Quavo, falling back to number 7. Looks like the radio momentum finally ran out, which means that the step back for Rose's I'm in Beck remix by St. John to number 8, it's likely temporary, especially given its radio strength. On a similar note, Rain On Me by Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande actually picked up a spot to number 9, mostly thanks to a great radio run and not losing much in other channels. And finally, we got The Box by Roddy Ricch, which at number 10, just making the expected exit. But on that note, our losers and dropouts, and we had 2 big ones that have clinched their year-end list spots. For better with Dance Monkey by Tones and I still like that song. And for worse with My Oh My by Camila Cabello featuring DaBaby. Also took out Catch by Brett Young, That Way by Lil Uzi Vert, Turks by Nav Gunna and Travis Scott, and Out West by Jack Boys and Young Thug to boot. The latter likely falling short of any sort of year-end list position. Now our losers don't have much of a pattern though. Off the debut, Other Side of America by Meek Mill tumbled to 87, and as predicted, Deep End Freestyle by Sleepy Hollow slid down to 94, and off the meager gains last week, July by Noah Cyrus and Leon Bridges went to 99. Outside of that, I Hope You're Happy Now by Carly Pearce and Lee Brice went to 41, and Does to Me by Luke Combs and Eric Church went to 42. Both of them have year-end list spots, or at least shots at it. And then After a Few by Travis Denning at 48, and In Your Eyes by The Weeknd and Doja Cat at 67, they look to be falling a bit short. Outside of those, Chicago Freestyle by Drake slid down to 62, X by the Jonas Brothers and Karol G fell to 80, Ride It by DJ Regard dropped to 82, thought that would stick around a little longer, Drinkin' Alone by Carrie Underwood stalled out at 88, and Righteous by the late Juice WRLD continues to fall down at 89. Now as for our gains, given that we don't have any returning entries this week, it's kind of hard to determine whether there's much to like here. Yes, Watermelon Sugar by Harry Styles is continuing up to 19, and Bluebird by Miranda Lambert is somehow becoming one of her biggest hits in years at 33. I mean, they couldn't have pushed some of her cuts from The Weight of These Wings as hard as they are with this. Really? And Don't Rush by Young T and Bugsy featuring Heady One has surprising momentum at 56. Oh, and Emotionally Scarred by Lil Baby continues to do alright at 37, and ILY by Surf Mesa and Emily got a nice boost to 72. But on the other hand, while I don't mind 21 by Polo G picking up to 84 off the return, I'm not happy Mamacita by the Black Eyed Peas, Ozuna, and J. Ray Souls up to 73 off that debut. Can 2020 not be the year we bring back the Black Eyed Peas into popularity, especially given how flat, awful their new album is? Stay tuned for On the Pulse for more on that. Anyway, we got a pretty diverse list of new arrivals here, so let's start off with number 100, Need Me by J.I.
Did you wrong? I said you could call my phone when you need me, hit me when you need me.
Honest question, why is this only charting now? J.I. is a New York rapper who released this back in August of 2019, and he's actually seemed to have slowly built up some traction, but for the life of me, I'm a little baffled why it's taken this long. The hollowed keys off the sharper snares does drive more of a catchy hook, but J.I. is not exactly a galvanizing presence behind the microphone. He sounds thin and weedy, which doesn't flatter the pettiness of the song that's trying to be both hard and not taking your girl because her pussy smells bad, and then try to sound sensitive and winning some other girl over. It's an odd juxtaposition and makes the song kind of fall flat for me. More undercooked projection than a lot of reality. That being said, the hook might have more staying power than I'd like, so, you know what, I'm not even gonna try and predict where this'll end up. Number 96, The Man Who Loves You the Most by the Zac Brown Band.
I'll raise a toast, hope he understands. I'll always be the man that loves you the most.
Hey, look, kids! It's the cleanup job. Now, frankly, I'm a little bit surprised it took this long, given how disastrous the second half of 2019 was for the Zac Brown Band. I get a pandemic will give you an excuse to keep out of the limelight, so you're now back with a new single. And look, while there are problems with this, it's the sort of course correction that I'm kind of happy we did get here. I might not be wild about that faint drum machine shuffle driving the percussion for most of the song, and the reverb is a little bit too thick around Zac Brown's vocals for most of the track. He still doesn't sound all that great, and the acoustics feel almost uncomfortably close on most of the track. And normally I'm not fond of the I Loved You First brand of father songs, and this absolutely falls into that, with Zac Brown playing that father who will always be the man that loves her the most, that being his daughter. But I'll admit I'm a sucker for a lot of richer harmonies, and this sounds a lot more organic and textured than we've heard from this group in a long time, especially when all those fiddles slip in. In other words, definitely not their best, but very far from their worst, and that still averages out to good for me. I'll take it. Number 92, Done by Chris Janson.
You're perfect. I won't quit till the good Lord says my work is done.
Insert cheap joke about his career? Nah, I'm actually kidding. Chris Janson's actually had more staying power than I would have ever expected, given that he started off with Buy Me a Boat. Now, this is a song from his album Real Friends from last year, and honestly, I found myself liking this a bit more than I thought I would. The percussion is perhaps a little heavy, but it comes from an actual drum kit, and the echoing rollick of the liquid guitar plays off the organ pretty well. And I think Chris Janson's got a solid amount of likable presence here. But when I dig into the lyrics, it might feel a bit oversold. It's a connection that Chris Janson wants to see through to the very end until it's done, and there's this dogged determination that falls on that thin line between charming and a bit pushy. Again, the song is breezy enough in order to work, but I can see how somebody might find this a bit overbearing. So while I think it's decent enough, I don't really think I would call it great or really care if it sticks around. Just saying. Number 83, Do It by Chloe and Halle.
And that's just how we do it, do it, do it. Yeah, that's just how we do it, do it, do it.
I kinda talked around this song when I reviewed Chloe and Holly's second album, Ungodly Hour, last week on The Pulse. Seriously, go check out that episode. It didn't get nearly enough attention. And I'll admit, this isn't quite one of my favorites from the album, albeit still being pretty good. The wispy and watery keys from Scott's Storch that translate to a blend of snaps onto the clicking trap beat with the highs that are a little too loud. It can feel a little bit more clunky opposite their cooing delivery, just a bit more mechanical and hemmed in than it should really feel, especially for a song that's all about that sleek pull-up into the party. Again, I know it's one of those songs that's just not really for me, but I get what it's doing. It's alright. Fine enough. I don't mind it. Number 81, Savage Love, Laxed Siren Beat by Jawsh 685 and Jason Derulo.
Savage love. When you kiss me, I know you don't get two fucks, but I still want that. You're savage love.
Let's be honest, how mmay you really notice that Jason Derulo's been away for a few years now? As in, this is his first charting single in the States since 2017. Yeah, he's bounced back with producer Jawsh 685 with a lot of breathy falsetto, almost entirely thanks to how he built his presence on TikTok. And with this new song, I'm not sure how to take it, per se. The flip of the synth horns off the bouncy groove and the acoustics is almost disturbingly catchy, and Jason Derulo complaining about how this girl keeps using him as she bounces back and forth with her ex, he's now caught feelings. I mean, it's not really bad by any means, I don't hate it, and I dare say if it wasn't for Jason Derulo throwing in the screamed ad-libs at the end, I might even say I like it, but I also know how this could become an industrial-grade annoying synth anthem in record time, so keep that in mind. Number 65, Tommy Lee by Tyla, Yaweh, and Post Malone.
It's like an option if she talking and get out of pocket. Ooh, I'm living life like a rock star, pulling up stretch limousine.
Okay, what is it with otherwise name artists working with people I've never heard of before this week? I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised that Post Malone might work to elevate a peer that he's been touring with for a while. But if this song proves anything with its ugly trap beat and wonky acoustic rollick, it shows that Post Malone has presence and firepower that Tyla, Yaweh just does not have to the same degree. Yeah, the hook is modestly catchy, but it's not like Tyla Yaweh's flexing is attractive, as he treats his girls like an option if they don't talk or get out of pocket, and the rest of the bragging is just really undercooked. Honestly, this just kind of reminds me of what Travis Scott was trying with Jack Boys. There's just not enough distinctive lyrical personality to launch out of the main artist's shadow, especially when the song, it's as mediocre as this is. Number 59, Snow on the Bluff by J. Cole.
There's a young lady out there, she way smarter than me. I scrolled through her timeline in these wild times and I started to read. She mad at these crackers, she mad at these capitalists, mad at these murder police.
I'll be blunt here. This is not a song that should have been released. The forms and conventions of rap beef in terms of discussing progressive tactics and modern protest, especially given J. Cole's consistently dicey attitudes towards women and his understated conservative-leaning streak, it's the wrong platform, and it absolutely got a hand for both sides. And it's entirely an issue of lens and framing. Instead of broadly speaking on the protest when being called out, your first response is an attempt at tone policing, targeting the indie rapper No Name's hard left pivot in recent years, which, if you knew, came with a lot of backlash to some of her statements and a lot of work, even as he assumes it's just privilege. And at a time when her tactics are actually showing results? I mean, I call J. Cole's hip-hop centrist in discussions of middle child, and it comes through a lot here, to the point where I'm not at all surprised he's feigning some ignorance in discussions of capitalism and socialism, when his entire brand has been based upon woke intellectualism. So I guess we see where that limit strikes, when the money gets threatened. I mean, the frustrating thing is that he does loop things back at the end in highlighting how money isn't really making him all that happy. So maybe she's got more of a point than he wants to admit, and he just wanted the message to be delivered more gently? But his approach to it feels just off, especially given the gender and class dynamics surrounding expectations placed on black women. And in this time, and in this place, I mean, I think everybody admits this should have just stayed in DMs, even No Name's pretty great response that she she now regrets. But this song was a lot more revealing of J. Cole's insecurities, even despite the nice haze of production and the good flows. I still don't like it, but let's move on. Fight the real enemy here. Number 54, Shotta Flow 5 by NLE Choppa.
Used to ride his theme with some hot as jalapenos.
I mean, at this point, it just seems desperate. And what is there even to say about NLE Choppa delivering a 5th Shotta Flow? Just an extended verse against some blown out pianos and clunky percussion that's not mixed all that well. And here it just sounds all the more homicidal. Where his opening line is, I whip the pack like Ike and Tina. He calls all of his targets lesbians. He tells your dead homie to go fuck himself, and he comes back somehow, he'll kill him again. He fucks a girl to the point of blood, and then there's a stream of murders that makes me think that we're now on the cusp of shock tactics or even horrorcore. So okay, fine, we got a kid who is so wildly over the top in his menace. Maybe there's an appeal to that. If he was a good rapper, and that's what's frustrating about this. He can't stay on beat, his flow switch-ups are really clunky, and if he's trying to sound unstable or weird, the production just doesn't match that atmosphere whatsoever, so he just sounds incompetent. So yeah, just... no. Next. Number 52, Go by Kid Laroy and Juice WRLD.
I saw that don't ever leave me long, long, long. I guess I'm accident wrong.
And back to our relative unknowns of the connection to a much bigger name. Although in this case it's just kind of sad because Juice WRLD is now gone and the Kid Laroy is stuck without that mentorship that apparently they had. Now he's an Australian trap rapper, he's had some minor viral success of his own, and now with this collab, how am I again repeating a lot of what I said with Tyla, Yaweh, and Post Malone? The cheap sounding trap beat playing off the wonky guitar, Kid Laroy owning a lot of his style and content to Juice WRLD, where the song is just a sour kiss off to a girl who maybe knows them a bit too well, and it gets overwrought, kind of alarming really fast. I mean, outside of a hook that's pretty repetitive and guaranteed to probably stick in my brain, there's just not all that much to like here, or even identify as all that distinctive. It might serve as a springboard for Kid Laroy, but I don't know. Not sure there's enough to last. Number 51, Make It Rain by Pop Smoke featuring Rowdy Rebel.
I'll make it rain on whoever. I'll make it rain at whoever. Bitch, I'm a dog, a blue devil. I got the hoes like Hugh Hefner.
And now we get another larger name who has passed on with a less recognized name next to him. Only this time it's attached to that Pop Smoke posthumous album that's been sounding like a more questionable idea with every song I've heard. Now, to his credit, this is actually a bit better than some of the other songs I've heard from Pop Smoke. His flow is a little bit more stable, and even if it's all just hazy flexing and gunplay, he can at least deliver it well. And then there's Rowdy Rebel's verse. Now, for those of you who don't know, he was among the group that got locked up with Bobby Shmurda, and he actually recorded his verse over a collect call, and I actually thought it sounded fine enough. If anything, what kind of underwhelmed me here might be the production. Normally what I found most distinctive about Pop Smoke's work was his knack for big, suffocating banger mixes, and the weedy cycle of tones behind the percussion here, it just doesn't feel as dense or suffocating or punchy. In other words, you know what, I still won't say I've been truly blown away by a Pop Smoke song, but I hear more what could have been a formula that works. That's all. Number 3, The Bigger Picture by Lil Baby.
But we gotta start somewhere, might as well go ahead, start here. We done had a hell of a year, I'ma make it count while I'm here. God is the only man I fear.
I'll be very honest. I did not see this coming from Lil Baby. Actually, let me rephrase that. I would say that I saw snippets of him talking about his come up and taking more responsibility and growing up across my turn, and it was a bit encouraging, but it always felt drowned out by the flexing and everything else we've come to expect from Lil Baby that I just don't care about. So when he makes a political song in the sound and style that would speak to the kids today, I mean, I get why it works, but it's also focused, it's on topic consistently, and not only does he bring his conscious worries and fears to the forefront for himself and his family and his community, but also highlights the demand for systemic change that rises above his own real-life gangsta experiences. The picture is bigger than just him. He recognizes his agency and power, and while his delivery is still kind of flat, and the song isn't quite the political agitation I'd prefer, it tries to play the middle ground a little bit too much. It's not as revolutionary as, say, Run the Jewels, but his flow is as tight as it's ever been. The cascading keys behind the trap beat build in subtle ways, and again, this is gonna get to the kids in a way that a lot of other hip-hop won't. And I'm not about to deny there is a different sort of populism with this coming specifically from Lil Baby, because it shows you don't need to be a Kendrick Lamar or a J. Cole to make this statement and actually drive change. Honestly, I like that this has, as of now, become Lil Baby's biggest hit, because it's a great song and a powerful moment. Salute. And finally, number 1, Trollz by 6ix9ine and Nicki Minaj. I mean, after the bigger picture, do I even have to talk about this? I mean, it's not worse than Fifi, given that it actually has a groove, and 6ix9ine actually ramps up his presence on the second half of his verse, which feels incredibly out of place opposite the very restrained and minimalist beat and melody. And I would say Nicki's verse is probably the best part about this, and that she actually seems like she's trying, but then she references the pandemic, she tries to argue 6ix9ine's status as a snitch, she calls herself a chart topper, and saying that all the other women rapping are just gimmicks or copying her, all of which seems like a serious stretch alongside some particularly graphic references to eating pussy, and then referencing Cookie Monster. Again, it's gross, but it's looking for me to react. It wants to be hated, whereas I'm just looking at 6ix9ine once again shredding all of his personality on the hook, and I'm left thinking, that kid's time's running out. Lucian won't have much use for him outside of this year. And as for Nicki, she might say that she's never chased corny. That might be true. It just caught up with her. So yeah, Trollz is easily the worst of the week, but not by a huge margin, because Shotta Flow 5 by Choppa is right behind it. Just more incompetent than gross as a dishonorable mention. Now for the best honorable mention, I'm actually going to give to the Zac Brown Band for The Man That Loves You the Most, despite its very real flaws, but that's more because the best is easily going to The Bigger Picture from Lil Baby, which, what a face turn at the best possible time. I'll admit, I am really impressed, and I'd like to see more like this. Next week, the fallout from all of it. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum.